It just makes me smile, seeing people having such a wonderful time and then they enjoy what they're eating, and it's a lovely coming together, and it's an age-old thing. It's where people used to do it. It's been for centuries. That's where people get together.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The modern food media often focuses on the next big thing, the emerging trends and the emerging young talent. But for anyone carving a path, mentors that have done it all before can help the emerging talent navigate the challenges. What does it take to have a meaningful and rich career in the industry and leave an indelible mark too? Lisa Van Haandel is one of Australia's most awarded and respected restaurateurs with over 35 years of dining excellence. Lisa, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Anthony. Very well.
Well, it's an honour to have you on the show and look forward to hearing yarns from over your career. How are things at the moment?
Things are really great, actually. We're enjoying having a look at what's happening on the dining scene and just taking some time. COVID made me slow down, which was probably a good thing.
What was that like for you to slow down after such a rich career, which we'll get into it in a little bit, but that slowing down is not a very sort of hospitality trait. Was it unnatural for you?
No, it was very unnatural. It took me a long, long time, actually. It was to not be waking up every day with that hum of activity in your brain and thinking about the next thing and tomorrow and, a year away. It was quite extraordinary, actually, but it's probably been a good thing for me.
You've been involved in some of Australia's very best venues, but what have your thoughts been about the industry and the sort of upheaval of the last couple of years? Do you think there's a new dawn and approach to hospitality emerging?
Well, I think there is. There's a different culture. People are very aware of that. I think it's probably an easier career to have as an employee because the hours are so set. You have a very definite sense of self. And so I think it's a bit easier as an employee. As an employer, I think it's a little bit more difficult. I think that it can be quite tricky these days navigating the extraordinary amount of what would you call it, compliance, and not that you don't want to, but there's just so much that you have to do on the background, and all you really want to do is supply a wonderful venue and give people a great time.
Well, you've certainly done that over a few decades. But take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family growing up?
Well, it was interesting because I had a British mother who was a full-time GP, and she had 6 children under 10. And so it was very simple British cooking. So there was, and also I grew up in the country. It was a bit of a culinary wasteland, except for one good restaurant, which I went to twice in sort of 18 years. So there was nothing really going on. So I don't know where it came from, except that I used to really enjoy cooking for people, and that I also was a huge reader. So I used to read everything. I mean, even Eden Blyton's book, The Magic Faraway Tree, had these beautiful pop biscuits filled with honey. So anything I could read about just really filled me with an interest in food, because it certainly wasn't surrounding me. And it was American Gourmet was one of those things that I latched onto very early on, which had brilliant articles, shocking recipes, but brilliant articles, and really created an interest in me in food and what it could be. So I had those two things. I loved making people comfortable, and I had a real interest in food. But that was where it all started, I think.
In those early days, do you remember the sort of food or feasts, or a particular feast that you cooked for people that sort of spoke of that beginning for you?
Well, it was funny. When I was a little bit old, I took a trip to Japan with John, my partner, and knew nothing of Japanese cuisine, and came back and proceeded to do a banquet for people, just recreating everything I'd done. And it was quite funny because no one had ever seen raw fish on rice, and they didn't know what to do with it or how to eat it and things like that. So I used to really throw myself in the deep end, cooking for people, cooking different things, and hope that it worked out, and it was usually delicious. So that worked.
What were your first steps into the industry, and what was it like for you?
It was, well, they were crazy days back then, weren't they? We came to Melbourne and opened. John was always amazing at finding locations. So he found a place in Chapel Street. It was around the time of Ekachina, I suppose, and Deshano over in South Melbourne. And we promptly opened Pronto Brasserie. And it was just a crazy hit from the beginning. And it was 7 days a week. It was open from 10 o'clock in the morning till 12 at night. And we just worked and worked and worked and learned along the way. And we didn't have an alcohol license for a long time, so it was BYO. And we just provided, and it was just all work, but it was a busy, thriving place. People loved it. It had a great energy. We were learning about things all the time ourselves, and learning how to deal with chefs. That was interesting. But we had a real team camaraderie and some great staff, so that was really fun. But goodness, we worked hard.
What did you take from that time, and what surprised you about running such a busy business like that?
Just how busy life can be and how much you can fit into a day, I think. I think we don't finish work at 1 o'clock in the morning and then we go to the hardware club until whenever. So we quite lived the life. What did we take away? Well, one of the main things I took away was a keen desire to not only run the floor, but to be on the other side of the pass and never be in a situation where a chef can hold it over you. And so, which kind of led to me having a bit of a stint I worked at the Latin. I decided to go and work at our favourite restaurant at the time. And I had a year and a bit in the kitchen there. So that was interesting for me.
How difficult was it working in a commercial kitchen compared to feeding people as you sort of grew to love?
Oh, goodness, such a difference. Obviously the numbers, the pressure, the timing, the service, the consistency. It was a huge leap, obviously, but still always that innate sense of wanting to make sure that they were comfortable and okay and having a good time. And the food on the plate was wonderful to eat and delicious. It was just, I don't know, it was a real drive in me to make sure all those things were right.
The success of Pronto, where did that lead to for you?
Where did it lead to? Well, we sold Pronto after 5 years and we had a bit of a break. But in the meantime, we'd been, as I said, I did that stint in the kitchen at the Latin with Bill Marchetti, which was wonderful. Met some great people and a few of whom came to work with us at the Stokehouse. But we had, we'd been casing St Kilda. As I said, John's always very good with locations, and we'd been visiting this little rundown shack on the beach that people used to go to, and it was the only place there, and it was run by a very grumpy German and some staid ladies, and they served delicious European cakes and Devonshire teas, and it was a funny little plastic screen veranda that you couldn't see through, and no real appreciation of where it was. So we tried for a couple of years to try and get onto that and move things around and approach the owner and the council and everybody. And then we decided, we got married, and on our honeymoon, after 2 years, the tender came up for the Stokehouse.
Oh, wow.
So timing was extraordinary. And I remember sitting on my bed in a hotel in Paris, sort of producing menus for the tender and writing what we'd be doing for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and faxing them through to the other end to go through into the tender. So it was an interesting timing for us, but we got back and then we eventually got it, and we were very happy to do so. And that's where it started.
It's an incredible, iconic site and restaurant that's had influence for a couple of decades now. What was it like with the building and trying to create the restaurant that you eventually created there? Were there challenges with council and the building?
Oh, goodness, yes. Yes, it was an old wooden building. We had some fun. It was a bit like the Wild West down there. And it was, well, it was really, well, actually St Kilda was. There was Bojangles down the road, which was a bit of a, you'd find bodies there during the day and all different things were happening down there. But so St Kilda was pretty raw in those days. But it was interesting, though, because people were wanting somewhere to go at the beach and somewhere to be, and that's what I think we built. And we were sort of confused that there was no real access to the beach, and understand when people wanted to be looking at it, even if they didn't want to tip their toes into the sand. But I remember we were building as we went. We did a 10-day turnaround once we got the keys, which is extraordinary, because we just wanted to be open for summer. And we threw our team in, and our first chef was the brilliant but eclectic, eccentric John Gallagher, and he created a great menu. And we opened, and we were busy from the second we opened. And it was, I suppose, one of the building things that we always remember was we had a 30th birthday around on the right-hand side, and they'd taken over the whole right-hand side, and we told them, you cannot go out on the veranda on the right-hand side, but please use the front one. Well, they snuck out there, didn't they, with their glasses of champagne. And next minute we hear this almighty crash, and the balcony had dropped a metre that they were all standing on. And we went round the corner, and they'd landed underneath the Stokehouse was a whole bank of freezers and things left over, and it had landed on top of the freezer. So they're all standing there with their champagne. Not a drop was spilled. Not a drop was spilled. And they all climbed out and promptly came back in and started partying again. So just things like that were rather challenging, yes. The council was very supportive, though. They were very, very happy. There was the tender was quite tricky. There was a lot of things we had to tick boxes on, but we did all of that, and then we just opened, and it just went from there.
The influence of the Stokehouse is pretty extraordinary. Do you have any fond memories of the Stokehouse, and why do you think it's so special to Melbourne?
Oh goodness, so many memories of the Stokehouse. It was so special, I think. Well, it was one of the first places down on the beach, I suppose, apart from Jean-Jacques. But it was, people would just come down. I think they discovered that Melbourne had a bay and actually a beach. You know, we live in the shadow of Sydney and its wonderful beaches, and everyone sort of dismisses Melbourne as a beachside venue, but it gave them, they could turn their back on the city and look out and see the water. I think that was pretty special. So many memories of great birthdays and anniversaries and wonderful long afternoons in the sunshine, and just creating that area for people to actually enjoy that part of Melbourne. I think that's why they love it and still do.
You've been involved in so many influential venues in Melbourne over the last couple of decades: Prince of Wales Hotel, Cirque the Prince, Long Grain, Long Songs, so many. What's been sort of the real highlights for you with venues that you really sort of look back on fondly?
Oh gosh, so many highlights. I don't know where to start. It's things that you learn, I suppose, from as you go along as well. One of the things I really had to learn how to do was delegate, and it took having a baby to do that, because I was so hands-on. And then we decided to. Then I got pregnant again, and we decided to take on the Prince of Wales. And one of the exciting things about that was putting 11 venues under one roof, you know, and opening them gradually. That was one of the first places to do that, I think. We loved doing accommodation. That was part of that whole nurturing hospitality thing. There's so many different areas in hospitality, and we tried to sort of stuff them all under one roof. But opening Mink Bar was great, that sort of Russian-themed vodka bar underneath, and doing things like putting in booths that had green and red lights, that buttons you could press, and if you close the curtains and press the green button, it meant the staff could come in, and if you had the red button on, it meant don't come in. So creating little tricky things like that in bars, and the people who came and had dinner and enjoyed it, and we'd have Lenny Kravitz walking through the band room at the live music venue, and taking him down the back way to the saloon bar, which was the gay bar, and he's going, "This is my kind of place." And having Sting doing yoga on the deck upstairs, you know, because he stayed for a month at the hotel, and just wonderful things. There's so many things, and of course, then there's the restaurant itself, Cirque, which was a very special part of our what would you call it, legacy, I suppose. Great things.
Well, the alumni that came from that kitchen is extraordinary. What does it feel like having so many young professionals come through your venues and go on to become the voice of Melbourne in their own venues?
Oh, Huck, that's one of my greatest joys. And we visit them often wherever they're doing things. And if I can say it, terribly proud, I think. It really was, the alumni, I always think of it as an octopus, in hospitality where they've just gone out and done their things. And whether it's the wine store, the Prince Wine Store, then we built the bigger one in South Melbourne, and the wine program that we introduced early on, and they'd all the young sommeliers had come and either work with us or learn from Philip Rich's courses, and or if it's the event, the event spaces that have come out of there and the people we've worked with. We're very, very proud of the young people who've come through and done their thing. I mean, a lot of the chefs that went through Circa, Dave Moyle, Matt Wilkinson, Andrew McConnell, Ben Shuri, it's wonderful to see that. Yeah, it really is, and a lot of the wine industry as well, which yes, we're very proud of, very proud.
One of the key features of your venues has always been that the art of hospitality and the precision of the front of house. Tell us a bit about your theory and the approach that you have in delivering that.
Oh, goodness, that's one of my favourite topics, Huck. I think they're the most unsung heroes and the essence of hospitality, really. It's one of my babies. It's why I was the national judge for Appetite for Excellence for so many years, because I really felt that it was so important to give them something to be recognised by as well. That sense of hospitality, I think, is what keeps people bringing. They don't know why, if they've had a good time. They don't know why they're comfortable. They just know they are. And I can't remember who said it. It doesn't matter what you eat or what you drink. It's how people make you feel. And that's where it comes from. And it was very interesting. I just recently popped into a supermarket to pick something up and was struck by this young girl who, apart from being quite attractive, had the most extraordinary sense of service and couldn't help looking after herself. And I said, "Have you ever thought about having a career in hospitality?" And she said, "Well, I thought I was too old to learn." And she said, "But I just love making people happy and making them comfortable." And I said, "That's why you should do it." So I'm still scouting. I'm still keeping an eye open for staff. But that's a really big thing for me. And I love teaching people, and I love teaching managers how to train people and interview people and bring out that real essence, because you hire attitude, you can teach skills, but it's all about that attitude.
You mentioned the Appetite for Excellence program that you're heavily involved in, and tell us about mentorship. What do you say to those in the front of house that are part of that competition, or even your staff, about their profession and how they can get the best out of it?
I try and highlight to them exactly what they don't realise what they're learning when they're in hospitality, and it's something I also used to do when I used to mentor Year 12 girls at school and try and get them interested in hospitality. Is they just have no idea what they're learning once you're in the middle of looking after people. It's harness that what would you call it, a genuine nurturing thing that a lot of girls have, and a lot of boys. But it's just that bringing out things, and making sure that they just learn so much: efficiency and economy of movement, and thinking 10 steps ahead, and people management, stress management, crisis management, let alone the food and wine knowledge and peer exposure and things they have. So what they can actually get out of it as well as what they can put into it. And it's not, it takes dignity and intelligence to serve people. And if you can harness that and make them feel good about themselves, and you have all the ingredients for someone who's actually a great hospitality person. You've
influenced Melbourne's dining scene with so many venues. How much have you seen the city change in the last couple of decades in regards to restaurants and the offerings?
Oh, goodness, it does change. It goes in waves too. 1 minute St Kilda's the hot spot, the next minute the city, and then it's back to St Kilda, and then it's North Fitzroy, and it moves around, doesn't it? It's the changes are, I think that there's been a big boom back, which is wonderful after COVID. We won't talk about COVID. But just then you have, I think there's space for everything. There's space for the really big high-end places where people want to go and have big celebrations or show off or just have a great time. And then there's so many wonderful little bars and little places, which is often where people start out once they've been in hospitality, and they put their entire passion and life on the line, and they go and they open these wonderful, small, intimate, very curated places. So Melbourne's extraordinary for its dining scene and its bar scene. We're so lucky.
You haven't just explored Melbourne, you also opened some venues in Byron Bay as well. How did that come about?
Oh, yes, Byron Bay. Well, we used to, much talked about Byron Bay. We used to always go to Byron Bay for our holidays, and we used to stay at the Beach Hotel. And we had the prints and all of those sort of things then, and so we were well into hospitality. And we heard that the Beach Hotel was for sale, and we met with John Cornell. It was very private. He knocked back a lot of offers for the Beach Hotel because he just didn't like what people were planning on doing. Very protective. John met with him over lunch. He liked what he saw and heard, and he said, but you'll have to meet Delvine. And so that night we just went for dinner, and it was a little restaurant in Bangalore, and we sat there, and I think that John must have knocked Delvine under the table, because at one stage he just raised his glass and said, and it was a handshake deal, which is extraordinary in this day and age. And he sort of raised his glass and he said, I'd like to make a toast to the new owners of the Beach Hotel. So it was very special, because it meant that we got the nod of approval. They were very protective of what they'd built and the community there. And that was a very special beginning. So, yes, it was a great story. And then, well, Dave Moyle went up and we opened Pacific Dining Room up there, probably a little ahead of its time, I think. But that was a great thing to do, and we just loved being up there and taking on that heaving big bar and music venue, and it was great. It's been really good fun.
Was it different to venues that you had in Melbourne, and did you have to have a different approach for the market there?
Oh, yes, it's extremely about community and the locals up there, which is a wonderful thing. There was great support from them. They were all a bit nervous about us coming in, people from Melbourne, but they soon relaxed, and we embraced the culture. The Lifesaving Club was a big part of our sponsorship, all that sort of thing. So it was different, but the wonderful thing about Byron Bay is everyone's up there to have a good time. So, and if you can give that to them in a safe way, then it's a great business to be in. Great business to be in. But it was a little bit different. I'm not a beach babe, but I'm a bit of a city girl, but it's been a wonderful thing. John's second daughter, Elkie, moved up there to manage the whole thing, and she's established her life up there. So it's changed life for a lot of people. But it's been a really good time up in Byron Bay. We really, really enjoyed it.
Just as the pandemic landed, I know you didn't want to talk about COVID, but you let go of the beach house just before it sort of all happened. But tell us about that period of time and what it was like.
What, the letting go or the afterwards?
Yeah, of the beach hotel.
Oh, well, it felt very strange. It really did. But also because COVID knocked on the door the next day, we were probably highly relieved. But that was it's like letting go of any of your businesses. It's like cutting off a limb for a while, isn't it? It's what happened after that? Well, we were still in Melbourne. We still had long grain. We still had all that sort of thing going on. We still go to Byron. Byron's changed a lot. It's been discovered. Great businesses up there, great places to eat. It's always been a wonderful place for, which is what we drew us to the food side of Byron, and creating something there was extraordinary produce. And everyone talks about produce now, but it really is an extraordinary produce, and the very fecund valleys and people who settled up there, 30 years ago with extraordinary livestock and produce and greenery and everything. So that was really special, and it's really been embraced up there. It's gone a little berserk lately, actually. There's so many places to eat. So it's that's been wonderful. But for us, I mean, we're still up there. We're still up there quite a bit. We enjoy visiting, and yes, it's been a good time.
What are you doing these days? You've had so many influential venues. What are you up to at the moment?
We're just waiting to see what's happening in the world. Well, we've got a couple of things on the go development-wise, but we were sort of happy. It was 35 years. You know, we had Long Grain for 15 years and other places for 20 years. We were quite happy just to step back for a little while there and have a look and see how things settle down, because it's pretty difficult, I think, for hospitality these days. But for all the people who stood in there and actually hung on in and made it work for them, a huge congratulations. That was a very difficult time. And I worry for the representation of our industry in government and things like that. I think that's something that should be really worked on. But so we're just waiting to see and doing a few things on the side. We'll just see. Never say never, Huck. There you go.
You reminded me of Long Grain. There's been so many venues; it's hard to sort of name them all. We'd need to do a 5-part series, but 15 years for Long Grain is quite extraordinary. What's some of your fond memories of that venue in Melbourne?
Oh, Long Grain was the best party place, and just delicious food. I think that was the thing. They didn't introduce a cocktail, cocktails to Melbourne, but gosh, when they came, it was, the stick cocktails and this and that. And I don't think people had actually ever had that in Thai restaurants before, except for Long Grain in Sydney. It was just fun. The soundtracks, the drinks, the food was delicious. Marty Boetz was, great fun to work with when he was here, and Sam Christie was really passionate about what he was doing. So we just had a great time, and it was such a good building. That building in Little Bourke Street too, the old stables. It was such a historic building and quite iconic. And they haven't changed the interior much at all. So that stands. That's a bit of a testament. It's quite beautiful in there. And just the food was just outstanding and very labour intensive. That was one of the things with Long Grain. Every herb is picked and every single curry paste is made from scratch. And so that was a great thing. We really enjoyed that time. 15 years of delicious food and good times and hard work.
You mentioned that a career in hospitality now is much easier than in the past with the sort of changing of culture. What advice would you give to young people looking to move into hospitality and build their career?
What advice would I give them? Don't go in with an open mind. Don't go in asking, what's your working from home program, which is what... because you're in the wrong industry. Go in with an open mind, but go in with it with take all the passion you have for the industry, and even if it's just a love of food, and go and see what there is, because there's so many different avenues in hospitality and what you can actually work towards and be in. There's being on the floor, there's being management, there's being HR, there's food development. There's so many different things. So go in with an open mind. Go in preparing to work hard, because to get somewhere in anything in life, you have to work really hard, and that's where you get the rewards as well. It's a bit of a shame that sometimes those extra hours that chefs used to do, that's when they could actually, that weren't in service, that was when they could stand beside the executive chef and learn things, So you worry about whether they're getting all the technique and all the learning they want out of their jobs these days. So I would just go in with an open mind, go in be prepared to work very hard and enjoy what you're doing, and be a sponge, soak it all up, and bring every element of your own natural hospitalitarianism, there's no such word, to the fore, and you'll be snapped up. There's great opportunities in hospitality at the moment.
You mentioned that the front of house are the great unsung heroes of the industry, which I absolutely agree with. Do you think consumers, after the last couple of years, have a greater sense and understanding of restaurants and appreciation for them?
There's a good question, Huck. They should have, having to cook at home for the last 2 years. Well, one would think that would be the case, but I am hearing that people are being quite rude and belligerent, which is a shame with staff. But I think that hopefully they would have a greater understanding of what it takes to actually put a good meal on the plate and to be looked after, because we all know that prices are rising. It's what I mean when I say it's a tricky time for hospitality. The cost of actually putting something on a plate or a drink in a glass, everything's just gone up. And probably for the first time, hospitality is being allowed to actually go, we can't make it work unless we put the prices up. So I hope that people understand and they realise what it takes to actually get it there. It's, it really is a work of passion and love to do what they're doing, and in providing for people. I hope they enjoy it. There'll always be, a few dodgy operators, I suppose, but I think there's a genuine want to look after people, and provide a great experience. So I do hope people are understanding that, and if they're not, they shouldn't be going out. Stay at home and whinge at home.
You've created venues that will live in the hearts of people for the rest of their lives with incredible meals and experiences. But what do you love about what you do?
Oh, gosh, it just comes back to that. It just makes me smile. Seeing people having such a wonderful time, and then they enjoy what they're eating, and it's around the table kind of thing. I have a real thing about tables that are too high and you can't lean across and converse with people. It's a lovely coming together, and it's an age-old thing. It's where people used to do it. It's been for centuries. That's where people get together. So it's that. There's also people go out and to learn about, beautiful new wines and different cuisines. And it really has become, it should be one of the most important parts of people's lives is just enjoying that, if they can afford to, obviously. But it's just such a lovely thing. And it just makes me really happy seeing people having a wonderful, I'm smiling now just thinking about it and even talking about it. It's a very special part.
I am too. And I feel like it's lunchtime, and I always smile when that's the case. Lisa, it's an honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, just to hear a little bit of your story. Your influence has been absolutely astounding. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much, Huck. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.